Hello and welcome to a brand new series for the Brofest YouTube channel called Brofest Reviews. In this we'll be looking at the games in our collection, not necessarily old games and not necessarily brand new games either. It's just whatever games that we've collected over the years. We'll be looking through the games and giving our review of each one. We'll give our thoughts and opinions, listing the positives, the negatives, and the tips for improvement if we happen to be a video game developer, for example. To kick things off, we'll be looking at an old favourite of mine from Blizzard Entertainment, Diablo 3. So one of the things I like about Diablo 3 is just the sheer accessibility that anybody can jump in and pick it up. So I've played Diablo 3 since it came out in the PC, and I got it a few years later for the console. I actually think it works better on console. It feels a lot more action-packed and it's very easy for anybody to pick up. I've actually introduced quite a few of my friends to Diablo 3 as well, simply by sitting down beside them, giving them a controller and letting them create a class and carry on from there. It really is that simple. Even people who've never played anything like this before, and even people that aren't necessarily gamers, have been able to jump into Diablo 3 and have a great time doing it. So one of the main positives is just the sheer accessibility to anybody. But one of the first decisions you'll be faced with in Diablo 3 is what class you're going to play. So each class has a choice between being a male or a female, and I'll just run through the classes here now. So you have the Barbarian, which is your typical tank class. He uses heavy weapons and has war cries to bolster his allies. The Crusader is a holy warrior. He uses heavy shields and heavy weapons. Another good tank class, but also a very good support and healer class as well. The Demon Hunter is a ranged attacker using bows and arrows. Very quick moving, likes to keep a distance, and has access to 2 energy pools. It's the only class that has 2 different ones that you have to manage. The Monk is a martial artist and also a holy warrior. He uses hand-to-hand combat, but also has access to mantras, which are great for boosting and healing your allies and weakening enemies. The Necromancer is your summoner class, who has access to armies of undead that he can summon at his command. Similar to the Witch Doctor, also a summoner, but Witch Doctor is a very versatile class. He can do almost anything. He can be a summoner, a ranged attacker, even a tank as well. And finally, your Wizard is your ranged caster, which specializes in elemental attacks like Frost, Lightning, and Arcane. Now, although I'm describing what each one of these classes does, they don't have to be played in that way. That's just your typical way of playing them. For example, if I take the Necromancer, he can summon armies of undead. However, if you didn't want to do that, you could be a primarily tank Necromancer. You could boost your armor, you could get stuck into the middle of a fight, and you can play that way. Same as the Wizard. The Wizard doesn't have to stand at the very back and cast spells. He can get stuck into the melee. He can be a tank, he can be a ranged damage dealer, he can be a support build. So there's a lot of versatility there just in terms of your character creation, and it really is whatever suits your playstyle. With that in mind, let's jump in and we'll see what the combat looks like in game. Okay folks, so I've just jumped on my Necromancer here just to show you how some of the skills work in Diablo 3. So you can see if I scroll around the wheel here at the top, I've got access to 6 different active ability slots. And these are all the abilities that I have to actually trigger. I have to use these reactively in combat. And down the bottom, I've got access to 4 different passive abilities. So if I just open up my passives, for example, you can see all of these here are my passive abilities. However, at maximum level, level 70, I can only choose to have 4 of these at any one time. So it means you have to be quite selective about what way you want to play your class. You have a lot of different options available to you, but you're quite limited in terms of what you can pick. But that's a good thing because it means that you have a very unique class that's entirely to do with your own playstyle. For example, if someone else comes along and plays a Necromancer, they're most likely going to play it in a completely different way from me, and that's a good thing. If I move on to my skills now as well, I'm just going to use my Skeletal Mage as an example. At a basic level, I summon a Skeletal Mage which will cast magic and do damage to my enemies. But what I have down the bottom here is access to 5 different runes, and each one of these runes will do something different to that one skill. So for example, the rune that I use at the minute just means that whenever my mages expire, they leave a corpse behind, and corpses are very valuable to necromancers for energy and health. However, if I didn't want that, I can choose to have contamination, which means my mages will pulse an aura of decay, or I can have skeletal archers instead of skeletal mages, which which basically attack faster. I can have one single powerful skeleton mage. I can use all my energy and summon one big one instead of having lots of little ones. And finally, I can choose to have my mages be summoned by using my health instead of my energy. So it's doing damage to me, but it's boosting the damage of my mages. So that's just one skill. With that one skill, I have access to 5 different ways of playing that one skill. And you can see, if you imagine that for every single skill we have here, we have 5 different ways of playing each one of these. And whenever we get into that, it makes for some very unique builds as well, which is a great thing about Diablo 3. Again, you can even see skills here that I'm not even using. I can only use 6 skills at one time, so I have to choose the 6 skills that's going to be the best for me. Now, the way I play my Necromancer, you can see I've got lots of minions. I've got skeletons, I've got my golem, and I can summon even more skeletons in terms of my mages as well. That's just the way I like to play my Necromancer. I like the idea of having an army of the undead that just do my work for me. That's a personal thing. For example, if I didn't want to do that, I could build an entirely unique tank Necromancer. I could get rid of all of my minions, and I can just put my skill points into things like my armor, my vampire type abilities like my Siphon Blood, and you can just be like a walking tank vampire, which is awesome. Let's face it, you can't get much more awesome than that. While I'm just showing you the menus as well here, after you reach maximum level, you actually still continue to gain levels in the Paragon system. I'm not very high at the minute, but the Paragon system means that you basically have more points to spend in your character, and you can boost things like their intelligence, which is their damage for a Necromancer, your vitality, movement speed, essence, and so on. There's lots of different things that you can put more points into even after maximum level. But that's how the skills and the character building works. Let's put that all into practice, stuck into some combat here. So one of the great things about Diablo is the combat system. You'll see in a minute just how frantic and hectic the screen can get with combat. It's very exciting. There's normally quite a lot going on screen at one time, and that's a good thing. It really keeps you on your toes, and it means that you're building a character that can react to almost any situation. What really comes into play is whenever you get a group of friends together, and you can play with up to four people, as I was saying earlier. And what that means is you have 4 different classes on time, and each person's doing their own abilities. You're working together to take down all of these monsters, and you can see as the screen builds up, more and more monsters come in. And you're basically trying to battle and slaughter as many of these demons as you can. So you can see the combat's very fluid. It reacts immediately to what I wanted to do, and there's no real sort of drops in frame rates that I've come across so far. It's all very smooth. It's all very well done here, and it feels like you're constantly just pushing forward, pushing through your enemies, and yeah, it's very exciting. It's good. So one of the main things about Diablo 3 as well is the loot. Whenever you beat certain enemies and certain bosses, you'll get access to loot. Which if I show you here now, hopefully we'll come across something, but if not, you'll get the idea. The good thing about Diablo 3 is pretty much everything you do will reward you with loot in some way or another, which basically means that you feel like you're always progressing through the game. You feel like your character's constantly getting stronger and you're being rewarded for your efforts, and that's a good thing. Now, unfortunately, if there is one negative that I have to talk to you about Diablo 3, it is in fact the story. I'll explain why in just a second here, but Diablo 2, if I can just go back for a second, was an epic story. It felt like you were always chasing Diablo down. At the end of each act, you were constantly just behind Diablo. You were trying to chase him down before he could basically regain power in hell. So every single act you did felt like it was leading towards something. It felt like you were chasing Diablo, you were getting closer to him, and Diablo felt like a proper threat. It was very exciting. It was a good game. But unfortunately, Diablo 3 doesn't really seem to have the same feeling of urgency in it. The game starts off with, well, Diablo is still defeated from whenever you beat him in Diablo 2. It takes place 20 years in Diablo 2. And basically all you're doing is you're tidying up the loose ends from Diablo 2. There's a few lesser demon lords that are trying to take control of hell. They're called Belial and Asmodan. And basically all you're doing is you're tracking them down and you're trying to stop them from regaining power and replacing Diablo. So that's all it is there. There's nothing really wrong with that. However, the way it's delivered, it doesn't feel like either one of these demons is a big threat. Not really. It feels like you're just sort of going through the motions, and each one of these demons and characters is quite a two-dimensional character. They pop up every now and again and deliver a line such as "You'll never stop me" and "We're not so different, you and I," which is just the same cliche I've heard before. In terms of that, the voice acting as well, personally, some of the voice acting is very good, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is, I would say, below standard, for Blizzard games anyway. A lot of it's very cheesy, very corny, and that's maybe to do with the writing as well, so I don't really know who to point the finger at there, but it's definitely something that could be improved upon. However, Diablo does pop up in Act 4 eventually, and unfortunately he's just a typical kind of two-dimensional villain. He doesn't have any depth of character to him. He just turns up, he taunts you every now and again, and finally you beat him, and that's more or less it. There's nothing really to sort of get your teeth stuck into there. There's nothing really new or innovative or exciting for the storyline there. So that is one negative. However, one of the positives storytelling is the cinematics that Blizzard had designed and delivered. I have to say, Blizzard cinematics are among some of the best in the video game industry, and Diablo 3 is no exception. The cinematics in this game are absolutely stunning. The attention to detail and even the voice acting in these are actually very, very, very good. You'll see in a minute that Diablo has a new design for Diablo 3. Diablo is a bit like the xenomorphs from Alien in that he changes his form depending on what host body he chooses to have. So in the first two games, the host for Diablo was a human warrior, so it was quite a bulky kind of big figure, and Diablo was this bestial hulking creature. In Diablo 3 he's chosen the form of what is essentially his daughter Leah, in such that Diablo has quite a feminine, sleek form in this one here. Personally, I don't like it. I'd much rather prefer Diablo to be a hulking, massive beast of a creature. And unfortunately, I just don't think it comes across that well in Diablo 3. But that's just a personal opinion. It's not a negative, it's just something that I picked up on. I would like to see Diablo going back to his old design, or even a newer design that has a big, sort of scary, a lot more sort of a bestial figure to him as well. Essentially, Diablo is basically meant to be the devil himself. He's one of the darkest figures, so he really needs to be an imposing figure. I just don't think he is in Diablo 3, unfortunately, but again, that's just a personal opinion.
Done well,
Act 5 in the story is really where things turn around, and the story does actually improve quite a lot with Act 5. The act begins with the return of Malthael. Malthael was once the Angel of Wisdom, but has now become the Angel of Death. He basically has a plan to wipe out humanity as he believes them to be corrupt by the demons. That's essentially how it goes. Malthael's a great villain. He's very mysterious. We don't know a lot about him, but we know that his plan is very urgent. And Act 5 does have an urgency to it. It does feel like, going back to what I was saying about Diablo 2, it feels like you are chasing down a villain before they can execute their plan. And that's what a game like this here, a really fast action-packed game, it needs to have that kind of storyline and that kind of feel to it. Because you're pushing through your enemies and you need to feel like you're doing it to serve a purpose. Which unfortunately I didn't really get with some of the first 4 acts. But Act 5 really does bring it back into focus, and Malthael is the centre of attention. Great antagonist and a very good act indeed. Once again, I just want to take a minute to appreciate the cinematics in Blizzard storytelling here. They do wonders for the game, they really do. Okay folks, I just wanted to show you another way that you can actually customize your characters here that has nothing to do with your skills and abilities, but it's simply to do with your cosmetics and how your character looks. And that's to do with this system called transmogrification. So how this works is you can choose what way your character looks. So for example, if I take the headpiece here from my Crusader, I can choose to have different helmets, like so. So I can really change the appearance of my Crusader, or any class at all, and choose different armor pieces, choose whatever way he's built, and choose what it looks like. If I change my shield, for example, and you can really build something that's entirely different from everybody else. And even when it comes down to things like the color of your armor and your dyes as well, you can change the color any way you want to. So again, it's just another level of character customization there, which you don't normally get. So one of the other things I wanted to show you there as well is whenever you beat all 5 acts of the game, you finish the main storyline, and you've got your character up to maximum level, that's when the end game really opens up to you, and you've got access to what's called adventure mode. Adventure mode is basically when you have access to the world map, and you can go between all 5 acts of the game. And within each act, if you want to, you can just go straight into any area and fight as many demons as you want to. There's nothing stopping you if you just want some quick gameplay. However, also in each one of the acts, you can see I've got different bounties that I can complete as well. Now, bounties are basically different missions that you can do in each act. Sometimes those missions is just to kill a certain boss, or sometimes it's to clear out a certain area of demons, and sometimes it's to find a certain chest and cleanse it. There's lots of different things you can do. And when you complete 5 of these, you get rewarded with a bonus chest at the end, which is full of loot. With that loot also comes what's called a Nephilim keystone. That's a different thing that you can do as well as adventure mode. It basically means you try and go to a different area, you beat as many enemies as you possibly can, and then at the end you're rewarded with a final boss. And then when you beat that, you're rewarded with a keystone, which unlocks a greater rift for you as well. Now, greater rifts are basically you're against the clock and you're trying to kill as many enemies as you can. The faster you go, the more rewards you get. So it's a really frantic way of playing. So what I'm going to do now, folks, I'm just going to do a quick roundup here of everything we've discussed so far in terms of Diablo 3. So in terms of positives, the game has great character customization, as we've covered. It's very accessible to anybody that wants to pick it up for the first time. It's a great couch co-op game, and it really is non-stop action. It's very exciting gameplay, very quick reaction combat, and yeah, very exciting, great for your friends, and yeah, just an all-round exciting game to get into. In terms of negatives, unfortunately, the only negatives I can really find with this game are with the main story, which I think is quite weak in terms of an overall plot, and the voice acting as well is a bit below standard. I would expect a bit more from Blizzard Entertainment, but again, some of that could be to do with the writing involved as well, I can't say. But if I had to choose any negatives, it would literally just be with the main storyline. As far as tips for improvement go, well, it goes without saying I would like to see a stronger storyline going forward with better voice acting. Diablo is essentially a story between heaven and hell, with humanity caught in the middle. Now, it really doesn't get much darker than that, considering Diablo is essentially meant to be Satan himself. So there is a lot of dark religious imagery and occult themes that Blizzard could really have played upon there, which personally I think they've missed a chance there. I think they could have gone darker with it, which they didn't. Personally, I don't think Blizzard should be afraid to take risks with these sort of games here as well. I think if you're essentially telling the story about the devil himself, then you should be prepared to go fairly dark with it and not be afraid of that. But your fans will respect you more for taking those risks and doing something like that that's a bit edgy and a bit different. As well as that, tips for improvement going forward, I would like to see more unique boss mechanics in the game. Most of the bosses in Diablo 3, while some may be challenging, most of them can be overcome with good teamwork and a strong build for your character. However, I would like to see some bosses with just more mechanics, perhaps some bosses that have unique mechanics that are just for team-based gameplay, that for example, you couldn't finish it as a solo player because maybe certain things like certain switches need to be hit by team members, or there's different mechanics that involves group play a bit more than just, you know, going by yourself and beating bosses by yourself. That's really a few tips for improvement there I would like to see going forward. But overall, Diablo 3 is a fantastic game. I would highly recommend it to anybody, whether they're experienced in this genre or not. Give it a go, check it out, and I guarantee you won't regret it. Folks, thanks very much for watching. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.